Yeah. Right, and even if like down in Oneida in October, that's when they start to have meetings. So like they pick all the white corn and they bring the kids out inside of the school. They do the arches and they do all of like the stuff in the cannery. So sometime I would really like.
So let me have this claim.
What's that? Oh, the Oneida. Like Green Bay.
Oh, Powell's.
Oh, Paulus.
Paulus, that's it, and the Rice family, and our nature.
You guys are ready to start.
And my daughter
I just need to grab a different camera from my
so
car.
that's where me and Dustin are from. So yeah, and then
Sometimes there's a lot of
his grandma.
Sometimes they're right underneath the fence. Or there's one kind of way up there, but he's got to look at it.
They have a big Native American church.
Hey Eddie, we have audio with the
Yes, something's wrong with the owl. I'm getting a different camera.
Oh, okay. Sometimes we just forget to turn it on.
Yes, but you guys can chit chat. I'll be right back.
So it was really interesting, like the cultural heritage is opening up, so they're yes, that was really sad. That was a hard one. But Dr. Minhan comes a lot too. Susan. Well, Susan's from Red Lake, and then they were down in Albuquerque for a lot, and then like now they're back up this way. They've been in Oneida when they were younger.
Well, I know Brian Bosto does a lot with the lacrosse camps too. Yeah,
they started. He was the first recipient recently, Dr. Minhan.
Did someone already connect with Lydia?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
She's on right there.
She is on?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like
So
she's.
he usually
I
goes.
just see I missed a text
within
from her.
that contract.
Yeah, she's
He
on.
goes for about 9 days.
From here I can see Lydia and I think it's Code
Before he
Founder.
got rolling with this stuff, I tried to use for.
Oh, I thought I heard Brenda.
Oh, we need help. We need a help and stuff. Yeah, right? Yeah. And he says he's retired, but you know.
What room number is this?
Yeah.
1206.
106?
That's what he's going with.
Yeah.
1206.
Guys, do you have it must not be casting of buildings here.
It is slow. Yeah. Should I pitch you for the new smart board now?
It's on our list.
I know.
Or you
I
just
told
want
her
a
that.
TV.
The camera, yeah, the TV screen things.
Yeah, we're gonna borrow the one from Myers.
I remember when those were first invented.
Yeah.
Me too.
Jules here can verify. That's why we say we need money for technology.
Yeah.
Well, now I think people are starting to probably understand and figure it out.
Jill knows
And then they'll
we keep
switch
talking
it.
about it.
Yeah, and then they will.
Or, you know, I really like smart boards, and so I think even this summer, or even last summer, some teachers that don't need their smart board, we're taking them if they're still working, or we're just piecemealing, like, you know, taking some parts out of other smart boards.
Yeah.
I mean, I like smart boards, but I guess the TV smart screens are just as comparable, but.
I never really used it.
Yeah, I used it all the time, and I was just in classrooms today, and one of the hours I was in, her smart board is really fuzzy, and the images are diffused because hers is not working very well. But now, you know, we put these all in that red plan, so 2010. So all of these smart boards are 20 years old, or 15.
You had one too.
Yeah.
Mine is too old too. You could use this though if you have to log in here.
Sure, that'll work.
Yeah.
You want to put something up on the smart board?
Yeah, but my computer doesn't have the right HDMI
Adapter?
Oh, here's one. Whose Chromebook is this?
You could try it. It's a classroom one, I think.
All right, it's 4:35, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask the people online to introduce themselves so I can make sure that I have them listed here on the roster to start with.
Angelica Ramirez.
Lydia Schenkel. Brenda Goldfein.
That's everyone in the group.
All right, Miigwech. Here in the room, I am Amber Greensky. Amber Lightfeather had a medical appointment, so she won't be able to make it. But I will be acting as chair for this meeting. I'll pop coordinator.
I'm Curtis Goodsky.
I'm Jill Lofald.
Anthony
Great
Buck.
Black. Who are you? Great Black.
Anthony Bonds, Assistant Superintendent.
Jamie Dela Cruz, American Indian Liaison.
Jennifer Murray.
All right, Miigwech, everybody, for showing up tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order, and I will pass it to Anthony Bonds.
Good, thank you. So, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining us online. As you saw in the email that I shared, I'm really happy that we are progressing with the development of the plan. Jeff has been working really, really hard alongside Jen here with getting the plan developed. So you have a copy of that. So this meeting is meant to just really, truly just focus on the plan. And so we're going to go just in order with what is here and just get your feedback on what has been drafted so far. And if you want to offer any kind of, if you notice an edit that needs to be made, because sometimes you know someone might catch a typo, let us know. If you have questions about something that's a goal or an initiative or an effort or an action item, please surface that with us. I know, and Jen will be able to maybe share how she and Jeff went about taking the input from AIPAC in the different meetings that happened prior to developing the plan. I know there were some meetings that occurred where information was gathered from families regarding what should be included in the plan, and I know that was considered as they were developing. So I'm gonna, because I was not in all the meetings that you were in with Jeff. So if you want to share how you and Jeff approached this development, just briefly, and then we'll get into the plan.
Okay. So the highlight of it all was how do we integrate into a plan that one is going to be accepted by the state of MDE, because there's some new rules, some new laws for it. And then at the same time looking back at the parents' non-concurrence that was sent to the school district and trying to implement as much as the concerns that were in there into the plan. And then in addition to that, making sure that we have, starting out, it's not like a do-over or anything, but moving forward with this plan is having some set SMART goals that the parents and the school districts and the staff can look at and say, here's where we're at in this plan, and this is what we really need to get moving on. So right now, that's how Jeff and I approached it. So I'm kind of like I have all this up here, and then it's just like pulling it together. And so we're really, the number one focus on this plan is making sure that the American Indian parents have input into the plan and making sure that if we missed anything, it is in the plan. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. So everyone has received a copy of the plan. So if you're online, we're looking at the Minnesota Department of Education, American Indian Education Aid application. So when we say the plan, that's the document that I'm referring to. So let's take a look at that. So probably just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'll follow by saying page number 1 in the title. So page 1 is pretty just straightforward, just gives some information related to what's required. Page 2 also, again, just more information on what is required in the plan. Everyone, again, has had a chance to see the plan before and or have a chance to look at it hopefully prior to the meeting. And then page 3, again, just more information that is required, requirements of the plan. Page 4 just talks about the plan, the roster needs to be included, application deadline, and how to submit it. So again, additional information. Page 5, I'll slow down right there so you can take a look in case you see anything that might be you might have a concern or question around, because it just lists who the superintendent is, the staff that worked on the plan, primary staff, and which is Jeffrey Melton, who is the support staff. Ray, the American Indian Advisory Committee co-chairs are listed there. Any questions with page number 5? Okay,
Just
page-
real quick,
Yes.
a minor logistical thing, but I see the district charter. There's nothing listed after those open spaces. I just call your attention to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if that needs to be addressed and just say like ISD 709 or
We
something.
do. Yeah, we just make sure we do that. And your
Oh yeah,
packet.
Jeff just took out a lot of the, just hasn't input some of that data yet.
Okay.
So,
So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
if you could just
like,
as you're going along, you just mark, keep note taking where we need to make corrections. Thank you, Greg. So and thank you.
No,
Okay.
once we move to page 6.
Right,
I can
page
go
6.
through it.
There you go. Page 6. I'm going to turn it over to again Jen, who worked alongside Jeff to come up with these items.
Just make, Greg, if you're taking notes, just know this, I came out of a meeting. There's going to be some grant potential for a Get Ready grant for post-secondary job shadowing or work experience programs that'll be coming out. So with narrative 1, with the post-secondary preparation, we need dates. We need time frames, not just say by the end of the school year. Number 1 for the American Indian State Aid is to serve all American Indian students. So that's why we specifically put in there the high school students will attend either 3 colleges or 3 programs or job shadowing. So we'll have to track that. And then making sure that they have like their input after each visit. So when you get on the bus, you give them the survey, did they like it, not like it, what could change? And then you have that documentation that we can build upon. The other one was the ACT. I know that's what we usually take in this area versus the SAT, but I always put both. And the thing with that is it's a good indicator for where our American Indian students are. At the Ojibwe school, we used to say 100% of our 11th graders would take that ACT. So we can set goals later on, but right now is to start prepping them for that.
Okay, so just a couple questions that I would like to see in here as far as specific data. How many American Indian high school students are there in Duluth that we are looking at and will be being tracked? Looking at Denville East and the ALC, I would like to see a specific actual number so when we could say, like, when we look at the end date, like...
Oh, correct, and that's what Jeff was gathering, is because when I do plans, I need to know how many students are in each grade, regardless if it's high school or not, and then you roll through that, and then which school are they at?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I don't, for the purposes of this plan, just one big number I think would be good enough. You know what I mean?
I know Denville has 89. Duluth East roughly has about, I'm just trying to look on the smartboard thing that we use.
Yeah.
89 for Denville, 47 for East, and I want to say there was 20-some at ALC. And then there was a couple online learners.
Yeah.
Is that like all American Indian students?
Yes.
Are we saying?
At the high school level, right?
Yes.
Not
No.
including
Right.
Middle school.
Not
Okay.
including middle school.
And then the other question I wanted to know is who in the American Indian Education Department is responsible for tracking who attends these college or career exploration events? Would that be our high school liaisons?
It's the high school liaison or the American Indian staff person that is going on the trip with them.
Okay.
Or it's the lead person that is, because we can't always put it on to either.
Right.
So whoever the staff person is, because you always have to do like the roll call when you get on the bus for the head count. So you might as well utilize that in a good way.
Exactly. Just wanting to make sure that there would be a point person
Yeah,
who's
and
tracking that.
we could build a quick little template to do a survey, so we're asking the same questions along all of the careers and college visits.
And then the other question, how are these college and career exploration programs above and beyond what will be provided by the district as part of their college career and life readiness curriculum? So basically, who is planning these additional programs? Again, is that going to be on the liaisons? Is that going to be on the coordinator? Is that going to be on the guidance counselor, because I think all three of those
All
are listed.
three of them need to work together because I
Okay.
don't know what your district does with all students. The above and beyond would be, for example, like the tribal college or the careers could be coming up to Fond du Lac to see what we have available at our clinic, natural resources and that kind of stuff. So there are specifics that most schools don't attend or won't.
Just it would be really good, I think, to get some of those specifics listed. in
Yes, and
there.
that's why it's vague on
Yeah.
where you're going.
And then just as far as utilizing last year's data, because we did have college and career visits that occurred in 2024, 2025, and my 10th grader went on a mandatory college and career fair at the deck with her entire class, or they had to do, you know what I mean? They had to go to either there or to a career fair somewhere else. I guess, and I'm aware of a career fair at East that occurred at springtime. I know the liaisons kind of coordinated that. That was specific for American Indian students. Just wondering if we have the data on how many students participated last year, and what's that goal look like for this year?
I can't answer what happened last year. The only data that I could help pull or request for one is whatever's in Infinite Campus, but typically the guidance counselors have what trips they went on. And then you asked, how do we know what now?
Just because this is something I asked over a month ago, like just in our, as part of our prep for this, and just never got that information. Like if it wasn't tracked, it wasn't tracked, and just kind of wanting to know what is our goal for participation this year.
And that is in the action steps also.
Okay.
So what is in here is knowing who our students are, number one.
Yeah.
Making sure that they're participating in the activities and the trips.
Yep.
So that's where we're going at this point in time.
Okay.
So that's why they need it, whether it's college, whether it's a career, whether it's job shadowing. Those are the things that we need to track. Typically what happens in 9th grade and by state law is students have personal learning goals, plans technically, and within there that's what is good for our American Indian students because that's who we're focusing on right now, right?
Right.
Is that they have those goals in there, so then we're servicing on their desires or dreams, or however aspirations, and then from there we can group better too. But in the beginning stages, since we don't have that information at hand, we need to start somewhere to get it moving.
Right.
Because I'm looking at this plan as a start of being more specific, and then we'll make a plan, more of a strategic plan for the kids, 3 to 5 years out, and then tweak it as we move.
Okay. And then as far as the ACT prep, I'm assuming because there was no data, you included 2023, 2024 American Indian student data. I assume none of our American Indian students took it last year. No, it wasn't.
I wouldn't assume that. I don't think Jeffrey or Jeff had the time or how to get the data at this point in time.
Okay.
So those are things that we can add. But you can always set a goal on not having data too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. So then I was looking at the test schedule for the district. They have their MCAs, their fast bridge testing, all laid out for the year, and it included ACT testing for all 11th graders. So, and we included $3,500 for that. So in our budget, but all our American Indian 11th graders should already be included in what the district's doing.
Right.
So we're targeting our seniors who may not have taken it, and our ALC students.
ALC students should be included in all students in a district regardless.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my question here is how much does it cost to take the ACT test?
Typically that is provided for the testing. What the students have the difficult time with sometimes is getting to the test or the test prep.
Yeah.
And those are what you need to focus on. And once we know our students better and their families, we can really dive into seeing what their needs are at that point in time.
Right.
So it's just kind of like a placeholder for just in case it's not the test isn't covered by the school or the students need certain things.
So to the test prep, like I said, I've got an 11th grader. She's supposed to be taking the ACT with the rest of the 11th graders. How do I, as a parent, access this ACT prep?
I think you can Google it. There's test preps right online too.
Okay, so there won't be like a specific after-school program
There could be.
initiative.
There could be.
Yeah.
But who would plan that?
That would be the coordinator.
Okay.
And the reason why I say it could be is because a lot of students they don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
What am I going to act? Right. So and sometimes group studying is better for some kids because then they can kind of like hear and you get that feeling involved versus just looking at the screen.
Absolutely. I'm just even thinking just like test-taking strategies, like
Yeah,
as an
those are
after-school
all
club, that
things.
would like kind of qualify, but just, just looking for specifics.
That's okay. And good questions too.
Yeah, good questions. And just my experience being a junior English teacher here is some of that prep is done by the school district, by the schools. I don't know if it's not necessarily the same date as East and Denfeld, but I would think, I don't know if it's on the calendar already for test prep here at Denfeld.
I haven't seen anything, but you know what I mean.
And when is the test here?
In April.
So, and the test is usually, are we still doing the test here in the school district? I mean, when I did it, we had a day, and it's provided during the school day, so there's no travel to, there's no Saturday, unless you want to take it again. Many kids do take it a second time to score better.
Like we already took it this year. Like they've already offered it once.
Yes, I had seen something where it was already
did they?
offered.
Yeah,
once,
like last week. The part that I like not to go too off, but I don't feel like we have specifically before targeted for prep classes for specifically American Indian students.
Sure.
So if there is funding in there as a liaison, that'll be something that'll be on my radar to start pushing that.
And that's why I thought it was important to put in there. And when you have 59 American Indian students last year that graduated roughly, right? And only 5, and then the year before you're going to run the average data trend, right? And only 5 took it, and your cut score is 20.6. That's telling me that only the cream of the crop of American Indian students most likely took that test, and they were the ones focused on. So we want to focus on all of our students, and maybe it'll spark a little fire under them to get them moving.
Maybe they'll take it and do really well, and then think about some other opportunities.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I guess this is just more kind of looking at what was the data last year for how many college and career fair visits occurred last year, and what the goal is for student participation this year. And again, who will lead those coordination efforts?
Right, and we didn't go off of that because I didn't have that data.
Yeah.
And that's why the goals are in there that all of our high school students will attend at least 3, could be.
Yep. And I guess that's why I'm like, if it's all, I want to know what that number is. Like 100% is a number.
And that's something the guidance counselor keeps track of.
Yeah.
Okay, but we, note that as a data request.
Okay.
Amber.
Yes, we'll do.
Okay.
It's already been submitted about a month ago.
Okay.
Hello.
So that's kind of where we're moving for the post-secondary. And it's a really good starting point. And it didn't have anything to do with previous data, so to speak. Just because I don't get it was tracked or focused. So I'm very American Indian students. That's what my focus and target is. And the district is all students, so we have to explain our plans more specific.
Right.
And that's where asking the coordinator throughout the year, like, hey, how's it going? Can we have an update on, I don't know, let's choose a month. In February, say, hey, can we have an update on how many trips have been taken so far above, those things.
I guess that's a good question. Has any trips been taken this year?
Yeah.
Today,
We took one today.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, we get
Thunder.
Yay!
East High School Indian Education and Denfeld Indian Education students. We don't have anyone currently at AOC, and it kind of slipped my mind to reach out to someone there and offer it. But we had a liaison from East, and I went today, and we took a group of about, I think we were 18 total.
That is
But your point is well made, and I think Lydia has a question.
Yeah,
But
Lydia.
your point is well made. How do we track, right? Like you're already taking a trip,
Yeah.
But you have the data, but do we have a
Where do we store
process that we automatically give it to, I'm going to point to the Office of American Indian Office to start tracking and keep it and come up with some way of tabulating it? We just need to get better at that data collection and gathering.
Well, here's the thing: is you could have the form. We have. I don't know if the school has it, but this is a thought that we used to do. Is so you have a form. You're going on a field trip or an activity. You fill that out. Where are you going? Who are you taking? You have the list of students, and then we don't have the template for the survey yet made, but then you will. And then you can track it by how many students. If you say you pick an activity, how many people went? You just want general knowledge, right? And then for more targeted, is you have the student. You have a spreadsheet on that, like this student attended this student, and then you look at, oh my God, there's 5 of them that didn't attend anything. Then we need to get on.
So we did have a survey today. I do permission slips for everything, and I keep a sign-in sheet for the day of that we go. Previously, at the end of the year, I was turning myself into our clerical, but we've gone past a couple of people now, and we haven't had like a real solid process. So I have been just kind of maintaining that data because I'm the one maintaining the sign-in sheets. So at some time if it's asked of me or something like, and I have it.
And
I
that's
would appreciate you sending it to me.
And that's
That would
something
be
that,
wonderful.
a district, when you're an AIPAC, because an AIPAC to me is like a school board, that's a good like line item for a report. So what did you guys do last month? We went on 3 trips, X number of students. So that can, really start moving along, and then that way, if something happens, Jamie, we have the information.
Jamie's file cabinet, yeah, right here in the bun.
Yeah.
Let's get Lydia.
Yeah, I think like when we were talking about the ACT prep, about like having that cost, and from my understanding it's a draft, and if it's something where we get further into the year and it's like, oh, we actually were able to utilize other resources for that prep, like we could file like a reallocate, like if we don't need that much for it, we could move that money later, but I feel like having that in there just in case we need it.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's a placeholder for the unknowns right now. And the thing is with the MDE is when you need to make an adjustment, you're not making an amendment, right? You're just asking to make an adjustment because it's a small amount. You just you contact them, let them know that you're going to reallocate or adjust that money into another line item, and they'll get back to you right away. Or they should get back to you right away.
It's pretty easy to
And I
do.
think that deadline is March 1st for a reallocation, correct?
No, well,
Or did that change?
it's movable.
Okay.
Because things happen in April that
Right.
So they have to have a deadline because of the grant, right? But they're a bit flexible when you have reasonable requests.
I just wanted to be clear because I feel like at the end of last year there was a little confusion because there were some college trips that we did with another program. This stuff is specifically what Indian education does. Okay.
Yes, this money in the legislative language, the American Indian State Aid is only to be spent on American Indian students until they are on par with their peers.
But if we're tracking students, so like if the goal is, students will have 3 post-secondary education or, post-secondary planning opportunities, and a student goes on a college visit that was sponsored by Upward Bound or TRIO, right? Like the monies weren't used for that student, but would that be counting as one of their post-secondary planning trips? Or are we saying we want students to have 3 separate or like additional visits?
Well, the money spent that's in the plan is spent for American Indian students. So when you're doing an activity, that can be added to their portfolio of their learning plan if that's what they would like to do.
But we're tracking the things that we are doing.
Yes, it's what we do in the program.
Above and beyond what
Above
other
and beyond.
programs are
So
doing.
like in the summertime, if you take kids to Nesbitt, which is an Ojibwe camp through Glyphwick, that's something. It's not an ordinary or what do you call it, across the board.
Universal opportunity?
There you go. Thank you.
Responding to Lydia's question though, but if our students, our American Indian students, when you said earlier that, if we see that they haven't gone to one of the offerings that we're setting up for American Indian students, and if they don't, we're gonna encourage them. But if they're going already to a trio, granted, I get about the money being spent, and the money's got to be spent on those. But you'd still value that career trip for our American Indian student that chose to go for a trio instead of
opt out, right?
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to clarify that.
Right, because there might be
Lydia.
Scrubs camp that isn't
Yeah.
in here
Yeah.
that a student wants to do. What we're tracking is that we're ensuring that every student is doing and
I
going.
get it.
That scrub camp, I know, I don't think anyone went last year, but the year before, I think a large group went and it was well attended. It would be cool if that was listed, just so it stays, in people's minds as we're going back and reviewing this plan as something, you know what I mean, that we should be looking for. Because I think that happens in April, doesn't it, usually?
Yeah.
And with the plan, and I know for time tonight, 7:30 I think is the time frame. I don't
6.
remember. Is it 6?
It's
Okay.
6.
So all of the other things that you have noted on the plan, what we're looking for right now is we're late submitting, and we have an extension. The conversation I had with the state was that their main concern is making sure parents have the input into the plan, and that their SMART goals and everything is appropriate. So we do have that time frame. So tonight is kind of going through the plan and seeing was something missed that was a major thing that worked really well for Duluth in previous years. Did we miss something? Did we miss setting a goal? Are we on area 2?
Just before we move on to that, maybe more a logistical thing.
Okay.
You had mentioned for the ACT, SAT fees that one of the bigger barriers was also transportation. Could we just amend that to put that in there so it's identified if you're bringing up that that's one that you've seen in the past? It's on the very last line of before area 1.
Oh,
Page 7.
fees? Okay. And add transportation?
Yeah, just because you had earlier mentioned that that's usually one of the bigger logistical problems rather than just the covering the test.
Study group or coming to school that day, making sure the kids can get. For the 11th grade MCA stuff, I used to take them to breakfast, and that way I knew they'd show up and then we test.
That's a great idea.
Okay, so can we move to 2? I'm not trying to rush anybody, so I'm really asking that as can we?
I'm ready.
Yeah? Okay. How about online? I can't really see that far because.
No one so far. We have Brenda, Lydia, and the Blue Skies person. They just dropped off the call. I'm not sure if they're going to rejoin or not.
I think Lydia's
Blue Sky is Angelica.
Okay. Lydia, we're going to move to
I was
number 2.
gonna say, I think I heard
I
you.
just turned it off in the hallway because I don't ever do it.
I heard you.
Okay, so
Where you want to sit, buddy?
the plan as we were rolling through is for the American Indian State Aid, you don't have to do every domain, but your last plan is so the state wanted to not let you drop off the radar. So that's why each domain has goals in it. And this one here is the academic achievement of American Indians. And so we want to spend a few minutes to read through that portion of the bullets.
providing these culturally appropriate incentives.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Amber.
Oh, okay.
I started halfway hearing you, halfway through your talk. Okay.
I'm just wanting it listed, like, I assume it would be our American Indian homeschool liaisons who would be providing the culturally appropriate incentives based on their work with the American Indian students in the buildings. I just would like that clearly laid out in there.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want it more specific for not the mentors?
Yeah, I guess I don't know who would be considered a mentor and who would have access to these funds.
Do you ever have a Check and Connect mentor?
There's Check and Connect mentors that the district provides. We don't have any like specific Indian ed
There's no
special, like there's Check and Connect mentors that our students utilize, but they're district provided. They're
Right.
not.
And that's why I mentioned the Check and Connect or the mentors, because I didn't know if you had that program or not. But when they're working with American Indian students, right, they need to know that there's this program available, that there's these things they can offer the American Indian students incentives. That's why it is mentors and the liaisons.
Okay.
Because they're the ones that have the relationship with the students and check for the attendance. Maybe that's the goal. Or maybe it's a GPA increase or passing classes.
I agree. I guess I'm just looking for that clear line of communication. Like, say I'm this mentor and I work with two American Indian students who have achieved these goals. As this not American Indian education employee, do they go to the building liaison? Do they go to the coordinator? They would go to the coordinator.
Yeah, and that's why we break away from the silos of really like working in a team.
Okay.
In a district is not just, it's when you're working with American Indian students that they're in the loop and the communication's happening.
Okay.
Because as a coordinator, I could pull that information.
Right.
Like I would know my students, and then I could plug in there. And then if they're working with a Check and Connect mentor, I'd be like, hey, I haven't heard from you.
And based on information we got last November, like our Check and Connect mentors, they've already established their caseloads by the beginning of the year, so they know how many American Indian students they have. I would really like to see it broken down so that like the bulk of funds for incentives aren't going to just one person.
Oh, it won't. You can do it in multiple ways. It could be like each student, you can put a per pupil cap on it. You can, maybe we'll buy some smudge kits.
Yep, I would just like to make sure it's distributed evenly among the liaisons and mentors based on their caseloads of students.
It's based on the student. Remember, we're benefiting the student.
Right, based on the student.
Well, and I feel like too, because there's sometimes incentives are individualized. For a student, sometimes it could be more of like a group activity too. So it's like, and that could be between like Denfeld and East, right? So it's like when we talk about making sure that we're getting Denfeld and East are getting funding that makes sense for the number of students that are at each school. But we could be doing things where it's like the high school students or the middle school, and you're pooling the students from the other schools, which I think is good for them to spend time with each other and not have so much like of that division, that community building.
And that's where the team works together to fine tune the details of it. When you're doing a plan like this, if you're that prescriptive, it doesn't work for every district. Like there's things that can happen. So as a team working together, you come up with that, and it can be at a directive or a suggestion by the AIPAC stating that in their meetings. But in a overall big plan like this is when you become that prescriptive, a lot of times what happens is, well, I'll just be honest, adults are like, don't tell me what to do. APAC is people really like this program. And so making sure that it is continued. However, in this program that we really like, because the students like it, we also have to track on what works and what doesn't work. So we need some data from this cohort. And sometimes it's a show me versus a feel me.
Yeah, and that's really something I would like to see because I know that students have already cycled in and out of the program. And I would like, and based on like the presentation we had, it was like once a cohort student, always a cohort student, right? Even if they decided that
They take a break.
yeah. But making sure that they are still being tracked as part of this data set. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's doable because once a student leaves your roster, I don't know if the district puts them in red or not, but you could do that. You could flag that in campus, but you can still track them as a general ed student, right? And you know where their ups or downs, and do they come back?
And just making sure some of these programs that are specific for the cohort students are being advertised outside of the cohort as kind of outreach. You know what I mean? Because we want our American Indian students to want to be part of the, you know what I mean? That it's inclusive and not necessarily exclusive.
There's a couple instances last year where like programs that were supposed to be for like the greater Denfeld indigenous community became only cohort trips and became like exclusive. And so then you have other students who aren't a part of the cohort that are like, the cohort's just not a good fit for them as like an academic model, but then they're like, oh, well, I'm not a part of the cohort. I don't get to go on a college visit that they went on. And so I feel like, are we, like, if we're making trips that are like cohort, because part of the cohort is your community of students, right? You have like, it's a cohort. Are we saying if there's trips or programs that are based of or like kind of created out of the cohort program, are we excluding non-cohort indigenous students because they're not a part of the cohort, or are we pulling those kids in?
Well, I think it would be in the best interest of the cohort to take advantage of this particular funding for the college and the activities. Typically in a cohort, you will have very specific things that only the cohort will do. And if that money is not something that I'm privy to outside of this, my focus's plan. So that's something you would have to ask the school district or come up with solutions or ideas of how to do things.
So she's right. I mean, sometimes it is just for the cohort.
Right.
Like some of the resources are just for the cohort for a special trip. But that doesn't mean in the collaboration with other departments that it could be a cohort and other Native students participated in this field trip. But that's where the coordination comes amongst the teachers and staff.
So, and that is something that I like when I planned events, because I work with Indian education. When I plan something, I open it up to the greater American Indian students. So that's been something that I think has been maybe not an issue, but it is something that we need to develop some more criteria around. You know, moving forward. I was just gonna say, like, there's probably a couple.
And then just based on the training we received last May with MDE, we were very specifically told that if it touches curriculum, AIE funds can't be used for it. So when the cohort classes are curriculum based, how does that work, I guess? If you're saying things are specific for the cohort students, because they're in a classroom, and they're getting these unique opportunities, I assume it's because they are curriculum related or standards related.
So like if they went on a ricing trip and it was part of their science curriculum,
Exactly, and they tied it into a standard based on what we learned.
Is it then something that could be funded by AIE? It could be funded by AIE because it's a cultural trip, right? Like it checks a lot of these boxes, but it's also a part of the curriculum. So where does that?
The answer is it could be, Tom. Tom, just for only bringing you in only because no problem, because they're talking about just field trips in general. So let's say Because what happens here is the science teacher comes in here, the social studies teacher comes here, the
Correct.
ELA teacher, I'm saying ELA, but the English teacher comes in here. Now those English teachers also have students in other classes, right? So that they have. So let's say the English class is going to take students on a trip, and it has to do with you said ricing. I'm just going to use that as an example. Something like that. So let's say, well, even non-native students are going to that trip. Well, if that's a field trip that students here are still going to take part of, it could be paid for out of the funds that normally students have to use to get paid to pay for those field trips, right? And that comes in the right rates. Or it could be specifically, paid for with these funds, but obviously only for the native students. So I guess it's just the communication, how it all comes together. I think the less we try to stop not creating those barriers and be more collaborative, I think we can, make sure kids have a lot of experiences.
And what you heard from MDE very specifically is that when it comes to Indigenous curriculum, because of the standards and the benchmarks, that is a district responsibility. What is not a district responsibility is if you want to do above and beyond in addition to a field trip. So that's the difference. So when MDE talks with groups, it is, let's say you want second grade books from grassroots for all second graders as part of the curriculum. The district has to pay for that. So with Indigenous education, for all that's coming, that is a district responsibility because it is a state standard which they have to meet by law or teach by law. So if that clarifies it a little bit better.
So like if the materials are used, if we're buying books that are going to be used by all second graders across the district, Indigenous or not, that would be the district's responsibility as a part of Indian education for all. If it's something that serves only exclusively Indigenous students.
Right, and think of the monies on this end for the state aid. It is to support in addition to,
not supplant.
Correct. So think of it in those terms. It's another way for I can read and memorize stuff very easily, but some people need that extra hands-on stuff. So think of it as in addition to.
So I'm just going to point out to the purchase of the Firekeeper's Daughter specifically for the English cohort class. Is that an allowable cost under American Indian education because it is being utilized as their curriculum?
So you have an English class.
Yep.
For students can come in, AP, regular, whatever.
No,
right?
It's the cohort.
Only so they bought
that book.
they
right
bought
there.
the Firekeeper's Daughter. It's a part of the
English curriculum.
class. Only for it's like exclusively for the cohort. Like
Well,
the
I'm going to
English.
ask Jill to answer that question because I know as a teacher we decide sometimes the extra novels that we teach in the classroom.
So this is not a standard. There's not a state statute. There's not a standard that says you have to read this book. This isn't a supplement to support other standards because there's standards about reading and about understanding theme and understanding
Or a
issues.
district will have certain.
But that's the book they're using to meet the English standards for this classroom, right?
That's one of these.
Yeah.
Am I gonna complain? Not complain. Am I gonna? Why am I doing it? Number one, right? Because it engages the students, right? And they didn't like this other book that the other kids in their grade level are doing. So that's one of these. Like,
And this is specific to the cohort. This is not being read in the whole English 9 classroom or in any other 9 through 12. It's not. It's just it's a book that I would
Right.
If they're reading
has
it
great
here,
interest.
Right.
If they're reading it here, it should
That's-
cover a standard or an
Yep.
American
Oh,
Indian.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, the standards are applicable to anything
Yeah,
that they
they are.
read
Yeah.
because it's built around the
So-
mechanics.
If
But
we
it's
were-
not the sole thing they're using for the standard. So that's why I'm saying to Jen's, this is a supplement to the variety
I
of things
guess
they're
based
doing.
on my conference with the English teacher, that is what they're using solely for the standard.
I bet not.
Because they're not using the new books. He's not using the new textbooks.
He's not using the
I don't think
streetcar
they're rolling
one.
them out till.
Yeah. Well, that's that's
rollout,
that's a
the
ninth
ELA
grade.
rollout has been a little lumpy.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I don't think it's finalized yet either.
No, so I don't know what that means.
So that's something to note for the AIPAC, that's a, clarifying with the district. As you well know, the school board approves the curriculum, so
Right.
that's something to work with, and the curriculum coordinator. So that's how when we have these conversations, it kind of breaks up a little bit, and like maybe we can talk a little bit more, and because people think one way and we think another way, how do we make sure that we're all on the same page?
Because like this is something that's more when we talk about like bringing cultural materials into the classrooms to support more engagement in like academics and reading. And if this is a book that's more engaging to the students because it's cultural, like that would be like meeting those, like supporting those, that reading goal.
Unique cultural needs.
The unique cultural needs of the students. So like because this is not a part of the regular curriculum, it's not something that other classrooms and any other classroom in the district is not using this as their book. This is specific to this classroom to meet those unique needs.
I don't understand how that's not supplanting, right? The book that's being read in for that classroom. Because if they were reading the same book as everyone else, wouldn't they need to purchase that book?
Actually, I'm tracking what you're sharing, and I think for as we move forward, like I think what Jen is sharing is because this is new and we're trying something. I think initially, if the funds support it initially, right, and it's paying for those books and the resources, but then next year we come and you surface that same question, say, hey, you know what? This actually isn't the English books that has been purchased by the district, and if you're going to use those all the time moving forward, then it would be, hey, you know what? Moving forward, the district should pick those up because that's now the general curriculum for the core. But it has to start somewhere, right? It's just more of like, and I think that's where the flexibility has to come with.
Right, and it's kind of one of those things where, teachers want the autonomy in their classroom too, but they still want to follow, what they're required to do, yet at the same time, there's, what maybe students might like better. And then once you can show that the students are engaged and they, enjoy that, then I would request it from the district for one of my classrooms, like as a class set.
Right. And don't forget, this is innovation. This has only been in existence for 2 years now, right?
Are we getting somewhere with this conversation, Amber?
And then there's another one.
No, I pretty much have the exact, because I don't understand, like I said, I don't understand why it's not supplanting.
Okay, so would you like me to check on that?
I would very much like you to check on that.
Yeah. And
Because if they were just reading the exact same book and just making a concentrated effort to make those cultural connections for a student with the same curriculum that the other students get, which is, I guess is how I understood the cohort to have been started, right? That they were going to really focus on these American Indian cultural connections in the core curricular
And
classes.
one of the things we have to be careful of too, as we have this open discussion, is when you're only focusing on like 18 or 20 students, it's really not a very equitable for the rest of the students either. So we have to really learn how we think about one program versus all of our Indian kids, and kind of like, do we want to just hypothetically speaking, if you got $500,000 and $400,000 went to one school for the American Indian students and left the rest, we have to really be mindful.
I guess that's like when I was first introduced to like the idea of the cohort, that's what I believed it was going to be, is focused on those cultural connections, and then the teacher support, and that teacher could then take those cultural connections and apply them outside of this cohort classroom.
And it very well can happen. Right now where we're at with the Indigenous Education for All, we're really trying to fine tune it and make sure that it's vetted materials and books and people to move into the public schools. We have a process with the state right now. It's getting our tribal governments on board with how to do that. So even that's taken us a little extra time.
Because my understanding is for Indian Education for All, those curriculum
That's not true.
Or I was looking at notes from a previous MIA and it was talking about like tribal
At the
input.
time you went to MIEA, we had not fine-tuned the tribal
Okay.
endorsement.
I think I heard somebody this summer actually from MD clarify that
Okay.
districts can implement their own curriculum.
Okay.
The MDE cannot endorse.
Okay. We can't endorse curriculum. Okay.
All right. Amber's moved on. I
Next
gotta give you a hard time.
That's okay. I appreciate the opportunity to ask my questions. I really do.
Right. And in this moment, if you have stuff, just again keep marking up the documents and then hand them in to us, and then between Jeff and Jen, they'll be able to go through because we found a couple typos. And again, if we'll capture those typos or corrections, just give them to us, and we'll take care of it.
I know everyone likes the graduation banquet. Most schools I work with, the families really do enjoy those, and being a little bit more innovative on how we spend money on powwows and round dances and things such as that. With a limited amount of money, really, because they can be really expensive. And so that was one of the things that we were looking at. Maybe with the blankets that were gifted, maybe the AIPAC wants to find people in the community that make quilts like back in the day instead of the.
That would be an excellent use of sewing machines.
Yeah, so there's things like that when you think a little bit like, grandma can come in and help sew. And then they have some what we call skin in the game when it's gifted to their graduate too. Like, hey, I helped make that.
I've always wanted to learn, like, as a community member, how to do a star blanket. You know what I mean? A star quilt.
I'm not one of those people, so.
Right, but that would be something that would be a really cool community engagement.
Community, and some would try to see if they could.
Oh, I haven't even eaten yet. Okay, moving forward, and remember too, if something like hits you in the head, just mark it, email it, because I know sometimes when we're in this meeting like this, you go home at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, oh, I was wondering.
I'm not gonna use pencils.
And this is the, relevant, for the unique needs of American Indian learners too, is having some presentations, some of our elders that can come in and share, maybe some activities. I mean, there's so many things that a program can do for our students, because we don't know what people like or what their gift and talent is. We focus a lot on sewing and beading, but then there's me. I like netting, hunting, things like that. So trying to tap into, so to speak, various activities and presenters. You just never know who's going to speak to the student, And that's one of the things that I, try to focus on a little bit more.
I mean, GLIFA 1854 Treaty
Oh.
Authority would be
If you
great
guys ever get,
resources.
like, stumped for possibilities and connections, shoot me a text.
Yeah.
there is a lot out there.
I mean, I would spearing the treaty right for spearing in this area. A great civics topic and cultural learning.
Oh, there's so much you can do. Exactly. So as we move through this, it was more about building relationships with our elders and our knowledge keepers, and having, just like I said, like, we don't know what talents and gifts our kids have until we expose them to various things. And you don't know who they're going to make that connection with the presenter and how they present. Anthony can come into a presentation and talk, and I can come into one don't know. It's the same message, but we just don't know that connection with the person. And the seasonal activities, of course, we want to definitely focus on that. I'm really big on those. And our kids really do enjoy it. It gets them outside. The holistic portion of it is, you know, they're getting their vitamin D, they're getting the fresh air. You know, the wellness part goes into all of this too. So it's not just going to do something outside. It has lots of components to it. And we definitely added in, how do you track this? How do you gather the data for it?
Yeah, just kind of that, the American Indian Student Standards audit. Are we talking about how well our American Indian students are meeting those standards, or are we talking about the American Indian education standards that are supposed to be implemented all along all classrooms, right? Because there's American Indian standards for literally every.
This is where I put, Jeff and I talked about that.
Okay.
Is number one, I know every 10 years core content is reviewed and potentially more standards, or the standards change a tad bit. So what I have the state do is they have a spreadsheet, and these were the previous ones. And I asked them to pull out anything that was American Indian or Dakota or, you know, very specific. And then it'll graph this
I've
for
seen
you,
that.
right? And what it does is then we bring this to the school. The school, they can do it multiple ways. They can bring this to the curriculum coordinator and find out what grades are they, how are they meeting, are they teaching, are they meeting. It's for the whole district, not necessarily just for American Indian students.
Okay, I just like that wording was seems
And
a
you know,
little
the school
awkward.
district themselves can do it, and then I worked with the school in my area, and they have the state come up and do it.
Right.
And they'll gauge that, you know, with a rubric, missing some components, there's some gaps, or not really, you know, you need to be decided.
I guess would that be more of like a PLC kind of activity where you're like,
Yeah.
you'd be asking your teachers, how did you meet this
Well,
American Indian
well,
standard, or what would that look like?
So in this district with Infinite Campus, teachers typically are required to put their lesson plans into that system, and so they can easily pull it. You can pull it like this, you know, all the standards have codes. You know, 1.0, it's like legislative stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so that it can be pulled that way, and it one with AI and stuff moving forward with technology. Holy, you can pull this stuff like no tomorrow, and then you can see where the gaps are, and maybe first to fourth grade are teaching about frogs. You know, you got to kind of like, that's what a district does anyway with their other curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
We're just focusing on
The
what are
American
the indigenous part. Yep.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted. I didn't understand if we were
Okay.
measuring how our American Indian students were meeting the standards, or if we were measuring the standards themselves. Okay.
Good
Thank
question.
you.
Yep. Clarifying questions. Gotta love them. Okay.
One thing. Okay. So in this other bullet point, I mean, we're talking about quiz bowl, drum, regalia making, ribbon shirt making. These aren't necessarily things that would occur during the school day, correct? These would be after school, most likely on weekends. Just making sure that if we're expecting our American Indian homeschool liaisons or American Indian education staff to head these additional initiatives, that they have either the autonomy to be flexible in their schedules, or that they are being paid as a contractor for their cultural knowledge for those. So I don't know how that
You would definitely
would
be
work.
contracted,
Okay.
and most likely it wouldn't be in your day because you want to offer it age appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the difference. So in a tribal school, we could have drum during the day because then the females could do other, you know, another portion. Quiz bowl, we had to put after school because it was 4th through 12th grade. There was just like no way. I mean, I went up and down to try to figure out how to schedule. It just wouldn't happen. So So that was definitely after school.
Yeah.
So there's multiple that, but yes, they are like coaches at any other extracurricular activity, band. What do you get? I don't know. Tag football or something.
Speech team.
Speech team.
Debate.
And I'm just referencing in some of the reports we got last year that there was struggles with our liaisons being able to be flexible with their schedules.
Well, you can do one or two things with staff, and it's a district thing. If a cultural liaison person really needs to focus on their caseload,
Yep.
and if you're asking them to do an addition during that time frame, it's probably that's not normal.
Right.
So that's why a lot of this would be after school,
Okay.
and because then you're getting the people that want to do it or have the passion, right? And if not, then you can look to other people.
Okay.
Could this, because the same bullet point where it says culturally relevant course electives, and obviously it's not something that would be able to be implemented this school year,
Correct.
but ways to like have doing like traditional drum, like being a music credit, or like doing regalia making, a ribbon shirt making, or beadwork being like an art credit. Like, is that something? It's more like for the school board district of like, could there be a way to create these classes that are electives that are during the day that could help meet for our students to meet those requirements for graduation that are in a culturally relevant way?
Yes, potentially. We've talked about that, Jill, at tribal consultation before, is having, we're focusing on the arts here, so it wouldn't necessarily be one full year of drum because you're excluding the females, right? So in a public school, you got some nuances with it, right? But you could definitely talk with the school board, pull some like Ojibwe history or some American Indian studies, or once you get more specific about something. Independent studies work a little differently. That's where an art teacher could sign off. But the other thing too is it doesn't necessarily, if you have, what's it called, consumer science, that could be part of making a ribbon shirt or skirt. With drum and dance, I don't think our elders would really,
It's a little bit harder.
That's a touchy one.
Yeah.
But with dance, that is part of the standards for art, for performing arts. So that could be added. So it's more about looking into what the teachers are teaching too, and where they're teaching it at. Just because it's never happened before doesn't mean it's going to. They taught, what is that, square dancing?
Yeah.
When I was on that.
How is that applicable to life now?
No, when I did the physical education.
Wait a minute.
And was a part of that, they didn't want to touch on American Indian dance.
Right.
Because they didn't know anything about it. They didn't know the teacher, right? And I said, well, what do you know about square dancing? Is it religious? What culture does it come from? Why is it, and they're like, oh, true. And now we have videos. I mean, there's things we can do now versus 20 years ago. Jamie?
So I was just gonna say, like, when even with the cohort, like, part of the thing that we did is I printed off all the standards and gave them to them, and we talk about like where these plug in. So it's not always about even trying to recreate the wheel of recreating this whole curriculum, because you really don't need to do that. You need to find the spots where this is relevant. Now, maybe other teachers don't really recognize some of those science things that we were talking about, those concepts. But like, there's a whole unit of birch bark. It is one of the most important forms of technology that we have. So when I go to classrooms, that's the part that I teach.
Yeah.
So even when we are talking about like some of, one thing was, yes, there are a lot of skills that are valid here, and that even with the cohort and some of the other classes, we have learned that we've had to find other things, alternatives, electives for students to have. And so one conversation that I've had even kind of with Jerry and other people is, what process would I have to go to create a class for this, or to create this as an elective to be added to the catalog? So that is a whole process on its own.
Like that's what I was
Yes.
gonna say.
And we do have an opportunity to do that. I mean, they work on it once a year. I'm not quite there yet, like ready, but there are several ideas that I have to do that. But also, like, just to bring up, like even when we were talking about the licensing, they can be independent study. And if you have the cultural teacher who has the skills to teach that and has that, then you can offer credit for those things. So we kind of have two things.
That's
like
with the American Indian teacher license, right? What I'm saying under the art or the science or the social, that teacher can sign on for that independent study with that student. Even with science, phenomenon is one of their overall reaches. Well, why don't you make sugar cakes on a cloudy day? They ain't gonna turn out. That's a phenomenon. So, but this, as we talk about all of these possibilities too, is like you said, start doing that, start networking, doing the elective courses. It could even be, like I said, American Indian Studies would be great, right? Teach about treaties and sovereignty and all sorts of stuff. And at the same time, thinking about the cohort, this is where my crazy brain always goes, is with the cohort, whatever you're doing in here with the teachers that are in here can easily be implemented across the other areas of the school once Indigenous education standards are there. Because then they'll be like, oh, what do you do for this? And you'll be able to say, well, we do this. And I'm a backwards person. I plan my project and then I look for that
connection.
Yeah.
So like for when we have students who like are in need of, a lot of our students are needing extra credits to graduate, right? Like they're in credit recovery mode for some of our students. So what I'm hearing is that an art teacher, like let's say a student wanted to like research beadwork and create beadwork and do like an art project to get an art credit, if that's something that they created, like some kind of like proposal, or this is what I'm going to do, and then an art teacher could sign off on that and say that is an independent study
They
credit.
don't necessarily sign off on it.
Or-
the teacher works kind of like the gifted and talented, where they have a specific project and specific things that they need to do within it. It's not just
Because it meets the standards that they need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just like trying to think of ways for our students. A lot of our students are behind credit-wise on when we talk about on track to graduate, and if there's ways that speak to them that can help them recover
and
those
there's
credits in creative ways.
there's multiple ways too.
And for the sake of time, I would offer that, and again, time is precious, right? I mean, if the AIPAC would like to have receive just a general understanding of how elective courses are made or developed, we can bring in the curriculum folks from the district and talk about how elective courses are developed and made, and just give you some insight on the process, for
I'd like to refresh that. I think that would be beneficial.
So 2 additional pathways that are, one is work experience. So if kids can find a job, and it could be a job, for example, like looking downtown at ACO, they could get not only some exposure that way, but then it's 95 hours, it's a half credit. We have gen ed work experience classes where they take the seminar and then they can have the work experience time out in the community. So that's another option for kids to recover credits, and a lot of our kids work. So it's a match made in heaven. And then secondarily, we're allowing kids to start doing service learning to get credit.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about some of those project-based stuff, like how do you incorporate the project-based stuff by providing that service and then doing the reflection piece is another way to get credit. So there are some different pathways that are starting to open up that used to be either non-existent or they were limited to students in special education. So there are, because people realize we have to give kids more pathways because the traditional pathways are not getting it done.
Well, I feel like a lot of our kids are hands-on, kinetic. It's like you're doing things, not just sitting in a classroom. So
And thanks for
service-
bringing up the work experience too, because that's been in Duluth since I was in ninth grade.
For a
Happy
long time.
Martius.
Yeah.
And
Remember we
It's starting to take off now. Once it crossed the Rubicon into general ed last year, like we're in year 2 of that now, and it's taken off at here and at East High School. So.
And my daughter, she did the same thing at Cloquet. She worked at the child care Thunder half the day her senior year, so it's a good experience. Okay,
So you said work experience, service learning.
yeah, 10 minutes.
Yeah, work experience indoor service learning.
Okay, so I thought it was until 7:30, so whatever you need to
This is
They're
good.
gone.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good.
Get eating.
Explosion.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're rolling along, and like I said, if you feel like we're moving too fast, just remember, at 3 o'clock in the morning, get your pen and write it down. Because the plan is not going to be perfect for everybody. This plan is what we look for as an overall. And things, as you move forward, this isn't something written in stone. This is a plan that has to be completed to receive funding. And as we move through it, you're going to start tracking it, and then halfway through the year, you're going to go, ooh, yeah, maybe as a group you're like, well, I really like that. And that's okay, because y'all know that your next plan is due in a few more months.
Okay.
So, yeah, we ended up moving the time frame on it. But anyway, so think in terms of that. This isn't like cemented. This is the start and a guidance for the district. Okay? All right, so number 4, we're reinforcing self-image. So programs and policies, a lot of that going on. The academic support, reporting system, students with the highest needs. These are things that I look back from you all on the concurrence and non-concurrence issues. And you're absolutely right. You have to move outside of your individual family and think about all of the students, right? Like the highest needs students. Those are the ones that are at high risk, that typically need the most support. And so, you having to plan and do things thinking on that. Because once you uplift the highest needs students, they're all going to be coming with you. They're all going to get on and get moving. But if we forget about the highest needs students, we're dropping off a huge chunk of our community here in Duluth. And so you do need to know the reporting system. How are our students identified? Is there a checkbox on your enrollment when you start in the district? Or did you just meet a new family and you're like, oh, hey, I didn't know you were, South Dakota. Did you know we have an Indian Ed program here? You get making those connections with the families. You're down at Eichel. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was a problem with my granddaughter because she wasn't enrolled yet because, our family, the Treasury Cox are from South Dakota, so you have to go all the way out to South Dakota and do the enrollment. Well, we've done that now, but over at East, they dropped her off of being Native American despite the fact that her last name is Charging Hawk, which should tell you something. And now she's back on. But do you have a problem with the district when people are filling out their multiple backgrounds, getting their Native identity and eligibility for things dropped?
No, technically they can't drop you. It has to be a parent or guardian removing you from the program. So once you check, this is what I tell people is when they ask for ethnicity, right? Doesn't matter, black, Hispanic, white, whatever. If you hit the American Indian box, you are considered American Indian in the district and for this funding and being involved in the program. There's other supports above and beyond that. If you're a descendant of a tribally enrolled parent or grandparent, that's another level of support. And then if you're tribally enrolled yourself. But this program here is for anyone that checks the box if they're American Indian or Alaskan Native.
I just wanted to ask, because when we started with the state identification, something was happening like a year or 2 ago, and if you checked, because I am Hispanic also, I checked that, and I was not identified as American Indian for whatever reason.
We switched that.
Okay.
We caught that. And so the group I work with, the committee I'm on, we're like, what the heck happened? And they're like, well, anyone that checks Hispanic, they automatically go there. And I said, well, you're in Indian country. We should have the one where American Indian, it should automatically go there. So they did switch that.
Okay.
And that applies to people who maybe aren't enrollable in quarter blood in any particular tribe, but who has descendancy from multiple nations.
You could be a 5th generation, and you check the box
So
that you're
it
American
applies.
Indian.
That is now working. Because we've run into other issues where, you know, like I've got a granddaughter and part of her family is from Wisconsin and part of her family is from Boys Fort, and she's enrolled in Boys Fort, thank heavens, but her Wisconsin tribal identity is not recognized.
So I'd say like what Jen was saying is there's different types of programs. So some programs, like the one that we're talking about, if you identify, you can click the box and say, this is who I identify as. And then there's some other programs that do require forms that you do have to identify, like where your lineage or tribal heritage is from. So there's some other programs that do require some more of that tribal information. This one is just if you check that box. So there's a couple different types of programs, but this one is just if your student identifies as Indigenous, no matter where they're from, as long as it's a U.S. based tribe, then they would apply.
I'm assuming U.S. or Canadian.
No Canadians.
What?
Yeah, no.
Because it's federal.
The technical term is a federally recognized tribe of the United States. So Mexico and South not included, and north of Canada and north of there not included.
So you could be full-blood Canadian, your family moves to Duluth, and you're not native anymore.
You're still recognized, you're not considered.
You're just not enrolled in the United States.
So I'm going to use my daughter as an example. For many years, she wasn't enrolled because I didn't know where I wanted to enroll her. But she has descendancy from Red Lake, Boys Fort, Turtle Mountain, Little Traverse Bay Band, Grand Traverse Bay Band, and Fond du Lac Band. All like she could claim any
of those.
one of those. And so what I'm hearing from you, I guess, is like, and this is something that actually came up at the TDEC session at MIEA, like, how do people want or should they be identified in their school records? Do they only recognize one, like you're saying your daughter's Boys Fort, or would she be Bad, could she list Boys Fort and Bad River, talking about, all of her lineage? Because that might impact their ability to, through descendancy, go to college, like at Moorhead State, right? Scholarships where they're eligible for those. So I guess, is that something that should be tracked? Is that what you're asking?
Well, we had this huge problem with trying to get somebody enrolled because his grandfather was Red Laker, but the mom couldn't get welfare if they recognized the dad, so of course he wasn't on the list. And then he's from Leech Lake, our community, but he didn't have enough Leech Lake to be a quarter blood Leech Lake because the Red Lake that wasn't.
And that just changed.
Yeah, Leech Lake and Red Lake changed.
No, Leech Lake changed
Changed, but
to accept Red Lake blood.
Yep.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. But that was, there was a huge problem getting him enrolled. Even though he was probably damn near full blood.
Yeah, so there's different things, and it's a lot to work through. And, tribal enrollment, some federally recognized tribes say you have to be born on the reservation in order to be tribally enrolled. Some say your dad needs to be tribally enrolled. Some say your mom needs to. Some of them, you need DNA tests. So they're all different.
Somebody's doing DNA tests.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So, the point of the identity part is just to make sure that anyone that is in the community have the services at the school even if you were a First Nation and you checked American Indian, it's okay.
It's okay, yeah.
Okay. It's okay. We'll still let you hang out with us.
Hey, I'm a Finlander.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we're talking about a little bit more accountability on a reporting system with the liaisons and academic supports, because really that's what we want to do. Our lowest performing students in the district are American Indian. We want to make sure that we're moving, right? District plan to promote three culturally based activities. Those are all things that was in things that the parent group liked. You liked the powwow. You liked the feast. You liked the brown dance. So that's why that's in there. It's not limited to. It's just in there because those were specifics that came from the group. Signage, artwork, tribal flags. A lot of schools are putting in the tribal flags, and some of them come with a formal way of doing it. So that does take some work. Leech Lake does have a policy and procedure on people that request flags, and a few others do too. But it is something, and it's just not throwing the flags up there of the tribal nations in the state or wherever. It's about teaching about them while they're there. And it also is a kindergarten social studies standards. Off the top of my head. So that's why that's there. And we're just talking more about like how do we make people feel comfortable in a school when you're a very small percentage. And so just seeing a few things like signage, the flags, it's not just about people that look like I belong to. It's about seeing it and feeling it in the room. Okay, so we talked about those. Behavior attendance, those are all things. Behavior attendance, referrals, academics, those are all things that the state has to report to the feds to receive their federal funding to. So those are indicators yearly from them. So kind of goes into here. We talked about Rock Your Mocks and Orange Shirt Day, and really creative on the Orange Shirt Day that you're making your own. I loved that. Rock the Mocks. Various things like that. Role models for American Indian students, cultural lessons. We just went through everything really that we possibly could that I saw that you guys were asking for or wanted. And some of it sounds repetitive, but sometimes when you're at this stage, it needs to be repetitive. Like two cultural activities. Keep mentioning the two cultural activities. Keep mentioning this. Keep mentioning that. Because it'll stick in your head a little bit.
And sometimes one thing can meet multiple goals too.
Right. Right. But you just want to make sure, like, off the top of your head, how many activities? Boom. How many college career things? Boom. It's like right there instead of having to go back and look. Questions? Concerns?
So just data from last year. I know there was a flag racing here for a Fun to Like flag here at Denfeld last November, which was awesome. They had a drum. It was really well attended. I got to be there. I heard after the fact that Fun to Like actually gave 2 flags. I'm not sure where the second flag ended up.
They have the second flag, and they're going to put it in the auditorium. And
So there's a flag in the gymnasium, there's a flag in the stadium, and
Okay.
there's a flag,
To
third
go,
flag
I
that's
think-
going to go in the auditorium.
Okay, so there's
stage.
And that's
3
during the
here
Veterans Day.
in Denfeld. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, sounds good. I just kind of wanted to keep track. It's kind of like that ongoing inventory.
I have a question. Aha! And my question is, does East High School have the same flag? And I'm going to suggest to the school board
Jennifer said no.
that we have one there, because I'm going to tell you something. I'm a graduate of East High School, and our chairman is also. And so, yeah, so Denfeld has it, why doesn't East? There's 89 students, I believe, or
Well, and like in here, I'm noticing it's been in here a couple different places that it will happen that the cultural event or the installation of signage, symbols, artistic will happen at a school. It specifically says like not Denfeld.
Correct.
But I'm only seeing middle schools and high schools. So what about our elementary schools?
That's something we can work on, but I don't
Okay.
think it's a doable thing in this next year.
Right.
Because of the time constraints, but, thinking about, to me it was like 4, right?
Yeah.
2 high schools, 2 middle schools, and then I don't wanna forget the alternative, school either, but.
And I think some of that was just because when we were at the meeting with Jeffrey, it was just the individuals who were talking about Lincoln, Denfeld, or Dean, and so those were the names he was reporting.
We have a question on the.
I did want to
One
a
second.
comment about
Someone-
the flag.
Yeah, we have a question here fast.
Go ahead, Jen, if you wanted to speak.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't think there is a flag at East, and I would also like to see, while we're talking about flags, I don't know, and I apologize, I'm late, I have been trying to get caught up on some work, I'm at my office right now, but there are more tribal nations, obviously, kind of in the Duluth area, so I don't know if that would be something that the parents might be able to take some lead on, is just reaching out, at least to our urban offices to get flags and to make sure that Denfeld and East have, the flags, at least of the urban offices. I think that would be something fairly easy to do. It sounds easy, but I know it's always a process, but that would be a realistic goal.
It's doable. We just had a flag raising down by Hastings last fall, I wanna say.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's doable once the parents can work together and figure out, who their contact person is, and if not, I can help with that too.
And just a FYI, Frances, she actually provided a lot of swag, and she works for the Red Lake Urban Office. She's been in contact at Lincoln Park when she was filling out her forms, and she's working on getting them a flag. So it's kind of something that we're all a little bit picking up on and doing. But I will share that working here with the student council, that my counterpart at East doesn't have as much support, and they have not been able to, their process for going through to get a heritage assembly hasn't been as easy. That's something that person has shared with me, that they're trying to meet with the principal there and get things set up so they can have a heritage assembly similar to the things that we're doing here. We're sharing these ideas with, East High School, and they're trying to do some of the same things there.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep pushing that.
Yeah. So maybe if somebody wants to go, he'll let me know when the next meeting is, and they can try to support him and getting that happening at East.
All right.
Well, and as a parent, just real quick too, as a parent of an East 10th grader who is actively involved in sports and different things, I've talked to Mr. Bug a couple of different times about, wanting to be supportive of whatever his efforts are. I know it's Native American Heritage Month next month, and so I'm willing to do whatever in terms of from a parent perspective to help out as I'm able to. Now that this month is coming to an end, thankfully, I'll have a little bit more time next month to volunteer.
Thank you. I'll let him know that.
Hey, Jen, also, will you text me and remind me? I'm going to be down in Prairie Island with TNEC all next week, and I can talk to the crew and see who their flag point person is.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have the flags from.
Just one page right now.
I'm on page 14. Where are the rest of you?
13.
That was on his last sandwich.
I got a half sandwich left.
Another minor logistical thing, if I can just cut in real quick. The third bullet point down, Ordine is misspelled as ordeal. I'm guessing it's like an autocorrect on the computer.
No, that is an ordeal.
Yeah.
It's been like that through the whole thing. So I
Did we,
figured it was
did we
an
capture
auto.
that it's Denfield everywhere?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, I missed that one.
Somebody's finger.
Oh, and some of them might have been my mistake too, because I have to work off my phone for some of the stuff, and it doesn't. You can.
It's a draft, so it's
Yeah.
it's going to be
And that's what I
reviewed.
said. It's a
Yeah.
draft. Okay.
So page 14.
14. And this is intercultural. This is kind of like the achievement and integration. You know, just awareness. You know, really having a diverse and diversity being okay, and you know, people embracing it a little better, empowering our students into who they are, and you know, also learning about others. You know, sometimes you know, I worked at a tribal school. You know, our diversity was 0. I think we had one white kid.
Or it was
Seriously.
urban and non-urban.
You know, that was it. And, we had 2 African American students. They came to play basketball. You know, so we were limited. We weren't diverse. So, you know, embracing that is a good thing, because people think different. Urban, rural. It's just good to learn about each other.
Hey, Jen.
Yeah.
Was that white kid, did he get the nickname White Steve?
No.
Just
No, and it's funny too, because you know, my daughter, she looks white, and so it's just funny. But she's probably an old Mont Lac, and you know, so I have to talk with kids in like 3rd grade is when the teasing starts, and so we had crazy conversations.
I'm sorry.
That's
It's been a
okay.
long
It's okay.
day, man. It's been a long day. I'm in St. Paul right now, and I still gotta go. I came down. I still gotta go back to Duluth tonight, so it's been a long day.
Drive safely.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, because I would be staying over.
Yeah, me too.
On page 14, I also see something that 3rd bullet from the bottom. It says all, where it says be present at all IEP process meetings. I just know that that's a big ask, you know, because it's too absolute.
Oh, you know, that is supposed to make that's not worded right.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
It's for liaisons or the coordinator, you know, the Indian staff person that the family feels connected to, you know, but letting our families know.
As requested or an action, you know,
They can definitely request it.
right? I'm just saying, because to say that it's going to happen, that would be difficult, because unfortunately, we have a lot of students on the IEPs, and there would be a lot of IEPs.
Well, I don't think it's for all IEP students. Wouldn't it be for all American Indian
There's a lot of
students?
American Indians who have IEPs.
There's a lot of
You know, the district has 30% of special education students. So you're talking out of the 680, you know?
Maybe spend many days.
You would spend every day.
You'd have to hire a person
Yeah.
specifically for that.
But it's more
Persons.
about advocating for the family and making them aware that it is okay and it is legal. It is absolutely.
That's fanatic, and that's all it is. I just want to make sure that all will change. We will reword that so it's not absolute, but they are available and can be requested.
Well, I think, yeah.
I think I
just
do think it
notifying
needs
parents
to,
of
like, parents absolutely need to be notified that they have that right to have an American Indian in the room for all.
Well, you know, that's where you can work with the SPED coordinator here too, is, you know, having that information given to the parents, because they know because not every IEP, or is it annually, right? So they have to get that information out. And then also working with having the coordinator work with the Indian coordinator, work with the special ed coordinator to get that done, and also let parents know that they can request culturally relevant materials.
Because our job descriptions for all our American Indian homeschool liaisons are incredibly SPED heavy. And I believe we get a significant amount in SPED reimbursement because of how those job descriptions are written.
I feel like if if the family wants it too. I feel like having that be something that a family's aware of, and if they would want that person to be there, like if they would want a liaison or another staff, cultural
Right.
staff present.
And they can send that out in a letter for the annual.
Right, that it's not like if a family's like, no, I don't really feel like we need that, or I don't want
No,
that.
that's okay.
That there's a person out there like, well, we don't really feel like we need them
That's
here.
okay.
Right, so
We're
it's
gonna-
like it's an option.
Right, that's what we said.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
From my time being here, my husband has worked here longer than I have, and he works in the SPED department. He's the office support for Laura Thurston, and I have had several parents come to me wanting a liaison present for their IEP meetings for their child, which I then do contact my husband, thankfully, because he's right there, and he makes sure it's right on Laura Thurston's desk to make sure our students are taken care of. So there's nice, we do have the partnership, but I would also like to see that given to, some sort of notice given to all of our American Indian families that are under IEPs from the SPED department with whatever other information they are also given for SPED information.
And not have it be buried in like the prior written notice where it's like, here's this giant stack of sped paperwork. Like,
Well, you can do that two ways. You can definitely notify the case manager of the special education student and also send home the same letter to the parents or, to the families. I'm not going to say parents because some of us did live with parents, guardians, whoever you live with as an adult.
they're adults.
Yes. So yeah, that's definitely, and then also there's also funding. I can, talk with Dan Torres at the state. He has a cultural liaisons, special education funding source, so I can look into that, because it is sped heavy.
It is,
here in Duluth.
and we won't go over today, but we will at another meeting, or Jeff will at another meeting share the staffing, because if we have several staff that are covered by special education funds. They are liaisons, but they're being paid for out of special education funding resources. So,
But yes, Lydia, we will. It's not required. It's a request. We'll get notice to get the information out. Okay. Because sometimes case managers for SPED don't know that do that too. So it's good to keep everybody in the loop on the same level.
yes, ma'am.
Question, is any of the current funding in jeopardy because of the government shutdown right now?
Title I funds are not, because they are actually from last year. So the set aside is already there for that. It's just how long is the government going to be shut down might slow the chunks of change coming in later on in the year.
This section, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jennifer has something. Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to wait because I didn't think it was an appropriate time, but since the question's asked, this has really been heavy on my heart and I wanted to bring it to the group. Is there can you hear me? Is there any type of effort, considering that SNAP and MFIT food benefits will likely be cut off for November? Would there be some type of handout provided maybe in the elementary kids' backpack of like list of resources, like food support resources in the community, just discreetly slipped in their backpacks? It might be a little bit more challenging for middle school and high school kids. They might feel a little funny about it, but for the elementary kids, just teachers just kind of slipping them in their backpacks, because I am really concerned about, a lot of our families are already food insecure. I don't know how people are going to eat.
No, that's a great idea. What I'll do is, right now while Jen is talking, I'll shoot an email to Adele Wellens, because sometimes what she puts out on, either through the superintendent's newsletter, it goes out to all families and or social media. That could be something that is just sent out as a, did you know, or as, one of the messages of, as these times come with food insecurity, how she would phrase it. That's why she's BIO. That she could say, here are some resources, right? It'd be easy for us to send something to families.
And Jen, they did announce today with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, SNAP is not, along with what's the other one? SNAP
WIC.
and WIC, and
Well, it's the SNAP related to MFIT.
Yeah, that's it.
Brenda has something. Go ahead, Brenda. Brenda?
Yep, I'm here. I did notice today, or maybe it was last night, the Duluth Community School Collaborative did post on Facebook some resources surrounding WIC and food benefits. And not sure where they got that information, but if you want to peek at it, it's there.
That's good. No, thank you, because Adele shouldn't have to reinvent things. Probably right there already. Okay, so thank you.
Just getting back into this plan, this section is very PD heavy. Just wondering, and there's contracted services for presenters and presentation resources and handouts if they amount to 11,000. Are Title II funds being considered for this? Is this above and beyond what Title II would be?
It's above and beyond Title II.
Okay, and then what about education equity funds or achievement and integration?
So where those pieces come in to this plan is under the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So a district has to show if you're gonna go above the 50% wage,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then there's another area where you mark achievement and integration or general funds or sped funds. So you list those.
Okay.
So
that's where we'll find that.
yeah. Yeah, because the Title I, for Title II, they require X amount is set aside from the Title I for professional development. And if you're giving PD or offering PD or trainings to others outside of this particular program, then that's where you would go for the money.
Okay, that's kind of what I understood too.
I guess I'm not seeing something that was, we need to pause. Something that we've discussed in the past and earlier for section 5, and then there's a line item in the budget about the MIEA conference for parents and staff. The only place I've seen it so far is for the students in section 1.
Okay, that includes parents and staff and students.
Okay, because on the budget it says it meets criteria for 1 and 5, but
Yeah.
then in section 5 in the plan
It
it's
was
not
in
noted.
section 1, and off the top of my head, it was something like making sure 10 students and X amount of parents and X amount of staff. Unfortunately it's normal. A lot of schools go to MIEA and they do not bring students and or parents. It's really staff heavy, and that's where you're going to get a lot of the trainings for the parents on how things work in a program. So that one was definitely in that portion for students to attend. Except we have football, you're gonna go compete, right? Or you're gonna go, on the tour with Johnny Johnson down Prairie Island to the Buffalo Farm, right?
Oh my gosh, Natalia, they tanned buffalo hide one year, and she's like, it was the most disgusting smelling thing I've ever seen.
Last year, also there was all kinds of really good sessions that had a fee associated with them that I know some of our students really wanted to go for, and I would like to see them have that opportunity to choose like those sessions this year.
Yeah. I agree. It's important. And then, staff, sometimes I know staff they don't want to chaperone kids, right, in hotels. So this is why, you bring some parents. You get more rooms, 4 kids to a room, I mean, I brought kids. I've met too many sometimes on overnights, but I do understand that. Okay, are we good with your question then on the MIEA?
Yeah.
Okay, we can repeat it into 5 too, if that's.
Well, I'm just looking at like the budget worksheet, and on the budget line item for worksheet where it says like conferences, it says MIA, it says specify areas of focus, it says 1, 5. But then when you look at the proposed plan, in area 5, MIA is not mentioned at all. So just like that they're not matching up with 1. And then in the part in area 1, and I know it's a draft, right? right?
Mhm.
So acknowledging that it is not in its final form. It doesn't say anything about, it just says American Indian students will engage in professional development opportunities such as the following, MIA. So it doesn't say anything about staff, parents, AIPAC, counselors. It just says American Indian students will engage in professional development opportunities. So like the only place that in the draft plan now that MIA is mentioned is Area 1 specifically only to students. It's not mentioned in like the PD or the AIPAC or anything else in this draft form.
Noted.
Thanks.
I'm not bringing all your students.
So do you want to describe, I know, again, you and Jeff have been working on this. What would be the process for, or timeline for updating
Okay.
the feedback?
When is the next meeting for AIPAC?
Next week
October 29th.
to approve this.
October
Jeff
29th?
is not going to be available in November.
Okay, I will be available.
Okay.
Is there an October 5th? Is that ringing a bell?
October 29th, there's a November 5th meeting at Lincoln Park Middle School.
Okay, I will be at that one.
Okay.
And then, so, are you saying you meet on October 29th again for AIPAC?
To vote on this, like
Okay.
specifically.
Yeah, but if it's not going to be ready, I would prefer to cancel that.
It'll be ready.
Okay.
It'll be ready because when I come, I'm down in Prairie Island. Next week. And so when I come back, just working out the approval. So when you go to approve on the 29th, I'll try to zoom in, but I don't really know my schedule because I'm helping with professional development down there. So what I would like is, as you're rolling through as the AIPAC, looking for the approval of the plan, make sure that the motions are made with changes, like what you just said, Lydia.
Mhm.
Like I make a motion to approve as long as
It reflects the changes that we discussed.
yeah, and then that way on November 5th, it'll be our last giddy up. The state really needs the plan, but I don't want to. This is an ego thing. I don't want to put my name associated with it if it's not a good plan, and if it's not parental input. So just be mindful of that too.
Sorry, we
So
on
what
set-
time will that meeting be on the 29th?
4:30, same time. 4:30 to 6,
Same room?
same room.
Okay, I'll note that, and if I can, like I said, I don't know what I'm doing at the nights.
Are we talking about Area 6 at all? I just had a question on who is the para that's listed in here. It says funds 50% of the coordinator, 50% of an office support specialist, 50% of one paraprofessional, and 100% of the 5 American Indian homeschool liaisons. I'm aware of 5 homeschool liaisons. I'm not sure who that paraprofessional is referring to. And then I'm not sure who the 3 American Indian homeschool liaisons are. Those staffing positions that aren't hired yet that's being described here in the Duluth Public Schools currently funds 100%
Jeff,
for.
I don't think you guys got to that. I don't think Jeff's got to that point yet because that's not true.
That's not. This part is not accurate. Okay.
It's not in red yet, but you.
Off the top of my head, 50% of the coordinator, 50% of the office support.
And 2 American Indian homeschool liaisons.
Yes,
That's it.
and there's 2, not 5.
2 that's being funded out of here. Remember, there are others that are being funded out of special education or other funds.
And then there is 1 paraprofessional, I believe, at the 50% match.
And I can look it up real fast.
A para, no.
Not a para?
No. Not at all.
Didn't we have an open position?
Oh, you know what? It might
It's
be.
achievement and integration and
Okay, that does not come out of this
That's
fund.
coming out of funds, yeah.
no.
We have to put, this has to be cleaned up.
Literally only
Okay.
have 50% of the coordinator, 50% of mine, and 2 liaisons. That's all state aid for positions.
Yeah, so the American Indian funds, under what you just mentioned, so let's be clear, half of the coordinator, half of the office support, and 2 homeschool liaisons.
Yep.
And the office support person, those percentages might have to change because under federal law, Title VI is not allowed to commingle funds for salaries. So we have to do some looking.
I think when we did the title plan, we only had one liaison, and we were told it was her who was funded under Title VI.
That could very well be. Yeah.
So all the other liaisons either come out of our state aid plan
Or achievement.
or whatever
Special
other
one,
district
yeah.
funds are being referred to here.
Yep, and I have the most recent, because I asked Simone, finance department and Gray and Jeff to update that list. Remember that it's called American Indian Staff and Programs by Site? Yeah, right? I mean, it's too far to show. You can't see it here. But I've had them update that, and it clearly identifies all the American Indian staff and which budget cover it. So there won't be any, and we'll share that at the next meeting too. So there won't be any misunderstanding on where the funds are coming from, and who's being paid out of which funds.
And then I know this budget then isn't complete, just we're eligible for $413,000. The amount allocated here is $358,000, so that's about $54,000.
Well, there's
that isn't
nothing
allocated.
If you look here, it has $0 for the conferences.
Okay.
Like the MIA has a $0.
I don't think the budget spreadsheet is correct.
Okay. That was just like a huge number discrepancy. I just wanted to.
No,
Yeah.
give me a second.
Okay.
It's like if you look at the shovels and conferences.
I'm gonna
there's
sign
like
off.
MIA, but then, like,
There's no easy point. I'm gonna sign
Big
off.
wish, Jen.
Yeah, big witch, Gigawadam, and I'll see you all next week.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my granddaughter, one of them went to Rockbridge last year, and I noticed that there's a significant number of, at least used to be Native American students at both Rockbridge and Merritt Academy. But I didn't notice any involvement of this group.
So I can speak.
There.
I know about those programs. So those are Duluth Public School students who
Right.
service that, and they do have.
Well, she was a Fond du Lac, but that's okay.
Right, but like the teachers, so like the services that Rockbridge, Merritt, and Chester provide are the academic is like the Duluth Public School District provides that.
Right.
So those are students that when we pull like our numbers of how many students we have, those students are included in when we say like, we're getting funding for X amount of students. Those students are a part of this and are eligible for services that we're talking about here. One of the issues that we've had is we don't have enough Indian Ed staff to service all of our schools. And so what has been happening is that at the request of like a teacher or an adult or a parent saying like, my student goes to Rockbridge and I want them to have some services related to that, sometimes they'll pull that in. Northwood also has some cultural services that they provide to the students in those settings as well. And that's something that the Northwood program is doing, and that's not the district. So the students are getting some services within there, but right now because of staffing, there isn't somebody that's like assigned to meet with students in those settings.
Right, it didn't seem like there was any information, because I was there around a lot, at least when Aisha first went in for the first couple of months, and no one there mentioned that there were specific Native American resources for Aisha there. Nobody had,
And
not
that-
the principal, not the school.
And so some of that is that a lot of the staff that you're working with aren't school district staff. So the school district staff who are aware of these programs, a lot of the staff from the district that are at those sites are the special education teachers and case managers. And so that's an education thing from the district standpoint of educating the case managers about those services, because a lot of the therapists and the staff and the team leaders are not district staff. Those are Northwood staff, and so they're not aware of these things because this is not the system in which they work in. So that's like an
Would
education
there be
thing.
a way to produce a sheet of paper that every parent or guardian that came in with a student would get at those locations, so that we could
Let me connect with Principal Henslow on that, and can you capture that for me today? To connect with Principal Henslow on. I want to make sure I'm clear. You want information on what?
Well,
you want not you. I'm saying we want to make sure that
parents and guardians have
related to.
information available to parents, guardians, grandparents, whoever they're with, just to get a piece of paper that says, hey, this is what's going on. These are what your student might be able to qualify for. This is who to call to find out about it.
So some outreach to the alternative learning sites about
Right.
So maybe like one of our brochures, or recently we sent out something to everyone who was JOM identified, but this is kind of the issue with not being identified in the system of Infinite Campus correctly as JOM or title, is that then you're not generated on one of those lists. So when we send things out, you're not going to be there, and unless someone is hand going through, which some of us do, go through names by hand and look up each person and say, oh wait, that's related to something. Like literally we're doing that. We're doing that to identify all the American Indian students, because if their forms aren't in, or if they're not properly identified in the system, then they're not going to be on these lists that go out for mailings or other things.
Well, and I think with the Northwood-based IDT programs, there is a little bit of a difference in like the system of what gets mailed. Like, I think there are some differences because it's an alternative learning center. That I think what I'm hearing is Mr. Bonds is going to communicate with them to make sure that there's not that breakdown of communication with those alternative learning sites. They're in the loop with the things that, because they don't have Parent Square, right? Like, so when we're pushing things out through Parent Square as our main mode of communication, and we have those parents and guardians, and that's not something that they have because that's not the type of program they're in, what does the communication for students who utilize those programs look like? If we're utilizing Parent Square as the main thing, I think maybe,
Yeah, that's something that would have to be looked at and overcome, because you're right. If they're not meant to be our students in our system, we have to look into that.
But if there were just a thing that could be handed out that said, does your student identify as Native American? This is here, this is available, this is how you find out about it, how you get through this is one sheet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the budget, while everyone was talking, I did hear like there's some stuff going on. Those are for another meeting. Right now, the ask, I'll just put that at the end, is for the budget programming. I came up with $135,600.
based on what's on here now.
No, what's on our ask sheet.
Okay.
This is a little small for me, and there's some, craziness involved in that. So I just went.
No, what else do you need?
So double check that one too.
Do you have an email address or phone number?
Okay.
I don't use the email.
That's okay. Number will be just fine.
And I just gave up, and it's so much crap.
That's okay.
So, any
So it's actually one page, so we could spend it on all of this. And that was, you sent that, but you're not
Yeah, I prefer to.
Okay. Just if I wanted to.
we get the keys.
Where'd you go?
She picks up the keys.
Okay, just 1 second. I just want to make sure I get her
Are you okay
information.
with what we discussed?
Am I okay with what we discussed? I mean, I thought it was a good discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll add more eventually, I know.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm looking for the specifics as far as.
And that's how we get better too.
Yeah. Yep.
That's on the list. Yeah,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Second that motion. Anyone object? I call this meeting adjourned at 7:38. Okay. What
Thank you.
7 what?
6:38.
6:38. Sorry.
What am I selecting?